The Philistines confined Saul's kingdom to the mountains in the center of Judea. And once again, it was on Mount Gilboa that Saul met his end. Remember that Saul was defending this mountain, and when you look at the steepness of its slopes, it's very hard to see how he lost that battle. It took David, the shepherd warrior who succeeded him, several years to recover the lost territory. The shepherds in Palestine still all play musical instruments just as David did. And they still use slings, though not to kill giants. They use them to guide their flocks. We were told that they're so accurate that in the recent troubles they were really a nuisance to our aeroplanes when flying low. But David's greatest feat was the capture of Jerusalem and the founding of the kingdom. You remember that Solomon sent to Hiram, king of Tyre, 4 cedars of Lebanon, and these are the Lebanon mountains. The only cedars left there today are the little clump you see in the center of this great Kadisha gorge. Here's a closer view of the clump. There are about 300 trees there now. Few people know how high the Lebanon mountains are. They're over 10,000 feet and of course well above the snow line. Here's the other side of the gorge. The trees themselves are now museum pieces, some of them, like this one, 800 or 900 years old, and looked after by an old Maronite priest and a special Syrian keeper. In the center of the clump, too, there's a little Maronite chapel. Many of the trees are inscribed with the names of famous men who have visited them. Hiram is said to have floated the trees down to the sea by a river, and the river he must have used is the Orontes, which irrigates the great Syrian plain with these old water wheels. They pick up the water from the river and turn them into these troughs which carry them out to the field, or carry the water out, rather. The stones are something of a problem. The small stones of the temple, like these now in the foundations of the Jerusalem walls, were no doubt quarried locally, perhaps under the site of the temple itself, and the methods used would have been the same as those used here. But the larger stones, like those on the left, some of them 10 and 20 feet long and weighing several tons, are rather a mystery. The holes suggest grappling irons and armies of slaves, and the history of Solomon's reign rather bears this out. For the temple itself, we are comparing the area, the great square you see here from the air, with the models made by Dr. Schick in Jerusalem. Now, you are looking due south from the northeast corner, and that is the northeast corner in Solomon's models. It was then a terraced sheep market. And here is the southeast corner looking towards the Mount of Olives, as it is today. And that is the same corner in the models of Solomon's temple, and on the left his banqueting hall of cedar wood. The temple itself faced due east towards the Mount of Olives. And under it, the wall flanked the valley of the Kidron, just as the wall does now, and you must picture the temple standing back in the center behind this wall. There is the wall under the temple in the model of Solomon's temple. There are no buildings as you look at the temple area from over the city now, but if you place in your minds that square opening in the right of the picture, you will also place the next view of the model. Here it is. That is the back view of the Solomon's temple. But the building of the temple ruined the kingdom, and after Solomon's death it was divided into Israel in the north and Judah in the south. The Hebrew historians were right. As this stele of King Shalmaneser III shows, even the mightiest of their princes was only a vassal fit to do homage to his greater neighbors. The writing is cuneiform, and the translation No, the heroes of Hebrew history are not kings, but prophets. And in thinking of the prophets, we have tried simply to show the background against which they lived and taught. On the one hand, there was the life in the palaces, with their beds of ivory, where, in the words of Amos, men lay at ease in Zion, and drank wine out of great bowls, and chanted and danced to the sound of the viol. Excavations have shown that the palaces of Ahab's time must have been very much like these great oriental palaces today. And then outside in the streets, there was then as now the same contrast of blindness and poverty and disease. And it was scenes like these that made Amos and Hosea social reformers. They called back the people to the simple life of the shepherd, which they always felt was the true life of the country. Even more than the people, it was the country itself which colored the prophet's teaching. Remember that Palestine is a high backbone from which you can see many miles all round. And as you stand on the top of Mount Hermon and watch the sun rise behind the hills of Damascus, today, as then, you see below you not one state or kingdom, but many states. And standing there, it is really possible to feel the force of the prophet's analogies. It is so plainly absurd that any idea of God could be confined to the territory of one small tribe. And rather it must be he that sitteth on the circle of the earth, and stretcheth out the heavens as a curtain, and spreadeth them out as a tent to dwell in. From Mount Hermon and from Judea you are often above the clouds, which really do curtain off the country below. The political extinction of the kingdoms of Israel and Judah was inevitable. They were attacked from the south by Egypt and from the north by Assyria, and gradually Jerusalem itself was squeezed out. And we know a good deal what the Assyrians looked like from the great statuary they have left behind. This is King Ashur-bani-pal, one of the first Assyrian kings to cross the mountains and attack Syria. And he and his successors came in chariots with horses. These contemporary reliefs show their horses, and they're quite as good as any the Athenians ever drew. Then in 721, King Sargon captured Samaria, the capital of Israel. All that is left of it now are the remains of a later Roman city, and the Roman amphitheater, which is now an olive orchard. And then later came Nebuchadnezzar, perhaps the greatest of all the Assyrian warriors, and he captured Jerusalem. A woman pleading for her life.